Welcome back, everyone. This is Liz Faircloth.
And I am Andressa Gadelli.
Welcome back to the Invest Her podcast. So as women, we know that we are juggling constantly so many different things and quite honestly, doing way too much ourselves. And this has got to stop. And it starts with delegation.
And there's no financial freedom without getting our time back. And I'm so excited about today's episode. We have Valerie Trapunsky, the author of Delegation Nation. We talk about the mindset that is truly holding women back from hiring an assistant and getting their time back. You can miss this episode. So Valerie, research has shown that women have a hard time delegating compared to their male counterparts. Why do you think that's happening?
So it's very interesting. The social role theory, what it tells us is that the qualities that make us good leaders, they can also make us feel like bad women. And so what that starts to look like inside of our businesses and inside of our ventures is that we start to delegate less. We start to take on more for ourselves. And we then underperform as it relates to men. And actually, when you ask men and women, if you ask women, do you delegate as much as your male counterparts? They say yes. And in fact, maybe I even delegate more. But when we dive into the research and we take a look at how much women are actually delegating, they're delegating significantly less than men. And this is a big issue because what research also shows is that those who delegate, they outperform those who do not delegate. So we're kind of in this world where we don't have the choice. We have to delegate, but there is something that's subconscious that's happening for women. That's a barrier that we have to get through so that we can reach that same level of performance.
So let's dive into that for a moment. That meaning like gender roles have gotten passed along. Is it some of that, that coming up? Is it, what you've seen your mother and your grandmother? Is it personality related? Is it a combo of all those things? Like what have you seen? Because I think that's important. We got to know what it is for us to move through it.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest subconscious piece that we are seeing is that women, because of our nature, we are afraid to overburden others. And we are afraid to be seen as domineering. This is not conscious for everybody, but it's subconscious, at least to a small degree, for the majority of women. And so when it's something in the back of our head, I'm afraid to overburden you, then what I'm actually doing is I'm going to overburden myself and I'm going to sell myself short. I may not do all of the things that I promised that I'm going to do. So I keep setting myself up for failure. But what we also see with delegation is that when we do delegate to others, they have a bigger and better connection to us. So our subordinates, our team members, when they're delegated to, they become closer to us. And so that subconscious piece is really something that you're right. That's the foundation. If that's something in the back of our mind that we don't even realize it takes us out of the game.
I love this so much. And I think we can talk all day, all night about this. Well, we hear from women that are very successful. They have built a very successful business. They have relied on themselves, super high achievers. And now it's time that in their life that they're like, okay, what's next for me? I don't want to keep hustling and just relying on myself. They are ready for the next phase of their lives. They understand the concept of delegation, but they're still in their head. The reasons why that we hear is, it's not that bad. The second is, I actually enjoy it. The third is, I'm actually good at it. And the third is like, we're too small. We're not a big company to delegate. And I had an aha moment another day talking to a collaborator, a partner, about the fact that women feel that they need to earn the right to do not be active. And then the guy says, we are born with that entitlement. We are owned that. versus, oh, I need to earn the right to have a flexible schedule. I need to earn the right to take time from my work to be with my child. I need to earn that. And until I burn myself, I am going to be holding it, because that's what hard work is. And there is this concept. So this is clear to a lot of women. They still cannot take the next step. And for them, they're like, but I don't want to grow exponentially my business. That is one of the reasons. What would be like the first step that they can take to start delegating?
I love how you phrase that from that mindset piece, because we can talk tactically. What can you do to start delegating, right? And we'll give you a full blueprint. But from the mindset piece, what I have seen work really nicely to start to understand how heavy of a burden am I really carrying. So what we know is that 30 to 60% of the work week is spent on administrative tasks and projects. And
Wow.
ouch, right?
That hurts my head. That really hurts my head.
And what's fascinating about this is not only is it that you're spending this much time on the administrative burden, and let's say you get an assistant and you build out a team, still that burden doesn't go to zero right away. So you need to know how to delegate. You need to continue investing in delegation, because that burden, it's like, you're going to the gym, you have to continue flexing that muscle. So from the psychological piece, what can we start to do is, we know the statistic. Now we have to make it really real for ourselves. So one thing that I often do when someone is kind of stuck on delegation is have them do a time audit. So have them spend 2 weeks using a time tracking software and take a look at how much time you are spending on what. And they're going to pretty quickly see, these are the areas in my zone of genius. These are the areas that I should be spending on. These are the revenue generating items. And when you start to get face to face with the fact that I'm spending 60% of my time organizing things, or Andressa, as you said, it could be something that maybe I enjoy doing the administrative work. Doesn't mean that I should be doing it. And what's at stake? What starts to become really clear is what's at stake. If I'm doing the administrative piece, then I don't get to do X, Y, and Z. It's a very scary exercise. Lots of people get really stopped from doing it. But I would say that that's the first step, is just getting really clear on what's at stake for you if you don't delegate.
I have a burning question. Do you think that women get busy on purpose so they don't have to deal with what really matters?
I think about this so much. And, a thought that came to me the other day is that a lot of this is rooted in perfectionism. A lot of it is rooted in, especially as high performers, those expectations that we set for ourselves. And so you had mentioned kind of, what are the excuses, right? Like, only I can do it. I am, if I give it to someone else, they won't do it as well. And the thought that came to me is that this perfectionism, it's one of two things. It's either a luxury. It means that you're so plentiful with your time that you are having these perfectionistic tendencies that you're getting things, 80% will be good enough, right? Like, you ship it and it's done, but you got it to 100%. Then you spend another 10 hours and it didn't really move the needle so much, but it made you feel better, and that's fine. But that's a luxury that you had those 10 hours. Or kind of in the direction that you're saying, it's self-sabotage. I am so afraid of how big I can be. I am so afraid of my potential. And it's exactly like you said, I don't need to be that big. I don't need people to hear me. That's for somebody else, not for me. I'm very happy to do my thing. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We really self-sabotage ourselves a lot.
And it's confidence, right? It's like, where do we get our confidence from? So the administrative tasks, or the things we've always done, right, have been where we feel comfortable, but really working on growth of the business and creative energy, and what do I really need to put my time in? That's a little scary. And I think that's why sometimes I'm only speaking personally. I have, I'll put time in my calendar that invites me to work on those important things. If I don't do that, we naturally can go back, right, to certain things we just don't need to be spending as much time on. My question for you, though, is so many women have done these time audits. They look at, and that's a huge suggestion, but they've done those audits. They established these are the tasks that I really need to let go of. They're very clear. So what's next? So they look at their calendar, they look at their schedule, they identify these tasks. What do they do next with that? How do they set themselves up for that next step?
So it's a great question. I have found that getting started, especially for either for the first time in general, when you're delegating to an executive assistant, or whether it is starting a new relationship that you've been flexing the delegation muscle, but you have a new assistant or a new team member that you're delegating to. My motto is always start with one or two very clear and measurable tasks or projects. And what I mean by that is that you yourself, when you're going to be delegating, you know the start, you know the end, you know what's going to be the expectation, what is going to be the outcome that's going to make you happy. And many of us, when we're starting a new relationship, we automatically, sometimes there's this a little bit of like this mistrust. And so we say, I'm going to start with the most complex thing first, and I'm going to hand that over to you. And I'm just going to see, can you do it or not? Because I'm testing you. But the thing is, you're going to fail, and I'm going to be right that you failed. Sure. And
it's the freaking ego.
Yes.
I'm telling you, it's the freaking ego that wants to prove your point and say, see, should never have hired that person. You're right. You're the only one that can do it. See, you tested, you gave it a chance. And it's the freaking ego.
I love that. Yeah, that's it.
Hate it. I like, come on.
Uh-huh. So that's where you want to start with something clear and something measurable. It shouldn't be the highest stakes thing. And it should be not something that's going to take me 3 months, because here's what could happen. Let's say your first task is set up my project management system. Fail because you may have the right person, but it's a long-term project. It requires a lot of back and forth and good communication. And so you're just only you're not testing the relationship. You're only setting the foundation for the relationship. And so you don't want those kinks inside of a very long and drawn out process. Something that's, I'll give an example. One thing when I was starting with my current assistant, I said, look, I have these trips. I need these flights. Very simple. We were able to go back and forth. And that was like the first brick of the foundation of our relationship. Then over time, we're able to do more complex things, but you never want to be like 3 months in and say, it didn't work out, but I don't know. Was it me? Was it the other person? Was it our systems? Like what failed? You want to, if you're going to fail, which I hope you don't, and the majority of cases don't, is you want to start with something clear and measurable, and you want to give yourself that win.
I love this so much, because as Liz and I have grown our company, I wish we have hired an assistant way, way earlier. And I wish that assistant also knew exactly what she was looking to do, because nowadays, executive assistants, if you're searching on the right places, they already know so much about what to expect and how resourceful people are. So I think that once women are able to rely on an assistant, they're going to have many times for the first time the feeling that they are able to lean into it. And that's why I say to women all the time, trust me, when you start delegating, you want to delegate more and more and more, because the trust is there. Not just the trust, as you mentioned, but the expectation, the clear milestones, what it is that the result. I want to talk to you about, I have a shift in my head since I started. Before, I was like, I'm going to tell them exactly what they need to do. And I am in a different phase right now. I am more committed to tell them, this is the results that I expect. This is my vision. This is the intention. This is what we are looking to serve. How you get there? Feel free. I am more into that. And I want to talk to you about it because many women don't start hiring somebody because they feel that is on their plate to tell people exactly what they need to do.
Yeah. It's brilliant what you're saying in terms of delegation, because the shift is very important. You're basically defining what is done, and you're not defining how to get there. But we said that, people, they are different, and the way that you operate will be very different. And there are people with a personality that's more flexible, that's going to say, you know what, get there however you want to get there. What's important to me is that this is the final destination. That does come with trust and with time. But there are also sometimes projects and tasks that you're going to be very specific about. So what I like to say, like, I'll break it out into two parts. If you know exactly how you want something done, like, I want this spreadsheet with these tabs, I need it to filter in this kind of way, right? Then you should say it. You may even want to make a shell of that spreadsheet. It'll take you 2 minutes, but you may want to be very specific if there is no other outcome that you're going to be satisfied with. So it's a bit of auditing. Will I really be satisfied with any direction as long as it's this? And when I'm more flexible in the way that you've described it, if I'm more flexible with my directions, then I have to be more flexible with how things happen. And also I have to be more open that there's going to be questions coming my way.
Something that's coming up that I see a lot, especially with the women in our community and just personally, is managing expectations. So you give the clear delegation. Okay, let's get XYZ project complete. You give the vision, the intention, you feel like everyone's on the same page. But obviously day to day, there's an expectation piece that comes up in working with people. I expect this, you expect that, or I expect this, and they're showing up differently. So that happens in all relationships.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I know, right?
Yep.
And I know I'm being vague, but I think this is a big one for people, because it does come down to coming back on the same page, realignment. So what would you suggest to the women listening? They delegate, they do everything they should do, and they have to manage that expectation. They have to realign, those expectations. How do we do that?
One thing that I've seen work really nicely is when you're getting started with your assistant, having a very well-defined understanding of what you want to get from that relationship. And so it actually goes all the way to the start of the hiring process. Do I have a good job description? Is it specific to what I'm going to need from this individual? And then I'm going to select the key skills and the key skills and competencies for this individual. And I should pick my top 3, because individuals, we can be very multifaceted, but you're not going to be the Jill of all trades, really. So I'm going to select for 3, and I'm going to create my job description. Managing expectations comes down a lot to, do I have this preset documentation, and have I thought through all of these things and created these contracts with these individuals ahead of time, verbally or hopefully in a written way, that I could reference back. So as an example, I'm working, let's say now, like you said, we're already in the thick of it. Now I'm delegating this and that. I'm throwing things, like I'm now kind of deviating from my scorecards. I'm just kind of like, we're in a really nice back and forth. Then something starts to fail and I don't understand why. A lot of the time, if I look back at my original job description, I am now delegating social media to somebody that doesn't have that skill set. I never brought them in for that, and they've failed my expectation, but it was an unset expectation. So auditing a little bit of that.
Sometimes when the balls got dropped, right? No matter what, you got to look at internally as a leader, right? Did I provide the correct expectations? Did they have the correct tools? One thing that we put together is this best practice regarding communication, how I prefer to be communicated, how Liz preferred to be communicated. In my case, the more data I have, quicker I can make decisions. And when people come to me, I want to make sure that they're coming to me not with the problem, but with 3 options to solve the problem and what will be their pick, right? So it's quicker on that. But I think that a lot of the conflicts are in a communication field, because some people like to communicate verbally. Others, why don't you just send me an email? Others might like, let me just text you what it is. In terms of communication, what have you seen with all the entrepreneurs that you work with and their relationship with their assistant managers? What have you seen that you worked and others that like might not work in terms of over communicating or not communicating enough?
So I've thought of this concept as I've been observing client assistant relationships for the past 7 years. And the concept of over communication, what I was seeing was that individuals were kind of inspired by Goldilocks, right? So if you have what you think is just right amount of communication, and then add 10 to 15% of additional information. That's what I've seen work really well, because we are in a remote environment. Because we're in this remote environment, we're missing a lot of context. So as an example, if I am delegating, I need a car to take me from here to here on this date, I can just give that amount of information and you may consider that to be, that's enough. But if I then add a little bit of extra content, like I've gone to this event before, this is what was important for me, a little bit of a stream of consciousness. You don't want to take it too far that you're now explaining, I was very disappointed last, like my mother-in-law called me and you won't believe it, right? We don't need all of that unnecessary information, but things that are your stream of consciousness, you can allow yourself this like additional 10 to 15% to add on to your delegation. What it does is that it gives the other person this ability to think strategically on your behalf, because you have now identified some additional pieces that are going to be important to you in that execution that you didn't really think of in a very clear cut, do this and these are the parameters. So the more context you give, and you have to make it a conscious practice, the more people can become thought partners for you.
Well, that's where I was probably raising my finger. I wanted to say something. So many times entrepreneurs want thinkers. They don't want doers. And so what ends up happening is you do give the scope, you give the task, the car analogy. Let's go with that, right? Is that complex of a task? Not really. I understand you have to give some guardrails, some context, of course. But if you're like, hey, I need a car on this day, that's the task. So you can give the same, I'm going to get to my question. You can give the same question. You can give the same task to two different people. One person's going to think about additional things that you didn't even talk about, and the other person's not.
Yep.
So can we play this out
let's
now?
Play it out. Sure.
Let's play it out. You, Liz, how would you ask for a car to go to New York to a conference? What would be your request?
Okay. So I have questions. I'm giving the task to someone, correct, Andressa?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So am I getting a driver for this, or am I actually renting a car? That's the first thing. And then I can answer your question.
The task is you are going to Wobie in New York, because this happened.
Okay.
Right? You're going to a conference in New York on this day and this time. That's it.
Yeah. So
your assistant.
I would say to the assistant, well, I got a guy that I really like who does driving from here to New York. So I'd give them that person's name, because I want them to use my person, say, this is what time I need to be there, and work backwards on setting me up when I need to get picked up in my hometown.
Let's say you're not in your house. You are in Austin, Texas, where, and you don't know that. What are your requirements for a car? Do you have any?
Oh, requirements. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I would just say something comfortable, something safe. Yeah, comfortable and safe. I mean, I don't need a luxury car.
Jesus, am I picky? Am I freaking detailed?
My details would be more about like time and budget, right? And the approach. So I don't want to drive a car. I want someone driving it for me. Those kinds of specifics.
Really? Those are all givens to me.
Okay. Well, we were two different people.
Of course. But the reason why I'm saying this is for me, related to what Valerie's saying, right? I get car sick. So it is important to me that we get an experienced driver that will not rush, that it will drive smooth throughout. I cannot have folks that brake quickly. That's not going to work. So I think that I didn't realize that, but I do give this context about me getting car sick. Therefore, it's not every single car that's going to work. It's not every single person that's going to work. And I need buffer on time because we're not rushing. So very interesting.
The point though, Valerie, for I wanted to ask you, and the point here is that there is a point where you want people to say, listen, I didn't get all this information. I need this so I can actually do what you're asking me to do, versus them going rogue, doing something. It's a mistake. And then Johnny picks up on dress up and Johnny's doing the stop and the go, right? And we're using a simple task. But I think that happens all the time. And I think entrepreneurs' frustrations and the women listening can be really frustrated that, like, I gave the direction, I gave the context, and it still doesn't go well. So how do you know when you don't have the right person, or the process or the directions were off? Like, how do you mitigate that? How do you mitigate that so you can move on powerfully?
It's a powerful thing. So one is, if we're looking at the processes, especially as you're setting up your relationships, one thing is about knowing where those decision-making endpoints are for the person that's supporting you. So for example, in this case, this may seem simple, but it can get very complex. Are your kids leaving for school? Did you think about, when you have to be back? How are you going to check in? All of these other things. Do you have a lot of luggage that this kind of car won't fit in? So actually, even something so simple can end up becoming complex. So one thing that you want to see is, do I see where my assistant is kind of tracking all of that decision making? Maybe there's an SOP, maybe it's inside of my project management system, maybe I see it inside of my time tracking, because it's a two-way street. So you've given me enough information to get started on something like this, but certainly there's a whole world of things where this will not go the way that you want it to, but it was something that was uncommunicated. So if I can easily go into a project management system, see the thinking behind this, and then say, oh, wait a minute, you are doing this, but actually that's not what I wanted. The more that you could do that preemptively before it actually happens and you feel like something fell, that is the best. So as transparent of processes as you can make for yourself, looking at your SOPs and having synchronous time with your assistant. At the end of the day, it actually ends up being the person that we start to relegate the most. We say, okay, if I need to drop a meeting today, it's going to be with my assistant. And you have to flip that. If I have to drop something today, I will not drop the time with my assistant, because if I meet with that person, then they're going to free up 10 hours of my time. And that's the most important meeting. So I would say there, now, how do you know that you don't have the right person? My motto is, fail fast. Don't get yourself to the point where you're like a year in and everything is like so jumbled together that you don't know what's wrong. You want to start the relationship slowly, build from there. Always communicate the things that aren't working. Allow the person to communicate back to you. And then you can cut things very quickly. You can say, oh, we're a month in and I'm very clear. Your personality doesn't work for me, or your approach doesn't work for me, or my approach doesn't work for you. As long as you are working slowly, you can be very laser on what those things are, and you can make a decision. Is that a deal breaker or not? Because there could be, oh, you don't know how to do social media, but that's not what I needed. So I'm going to realign my expectations and keep going. And then if you're getting into the same minefield multiple times, right? I'm like getting stuck with you in the same conversation, in the same problem over and over. That's usually a sign that relationship may not go the distance.
Yeah. And that's when you have to recalibrate and see what you learned and use as a learning opportunity, as they say, right? Everything is a learning opportunity. Valerie, this is great. This is a big topic, but a lot of great insight to give the women listening to start to move the needle on not doing everything ourselves. So where can the ladies listening learn more about you?
So you can go on chatterboss.com, BOSS.com. And you can schedule time for a strategy session. What that's going to allow you to do is just to have a stream of consciousness of this is where the potential areas of my delegation and how to talk through what a potential plan could possibly look like to alleviate those. And then, of course, would love to be connected on LinkedIn to have conversations, anything on the topic of delegation. And if I can personally be useful, I would be very, very happy to connect with this community.
I really love what you're saying because a lot of women want to delegate, but they don't see the potential. They don't know, like, what are the things that I can pass along? And I love that. So, ladies, if you're listening to this, please schedule a call so you can see what is possible in your business, so you can gain your time back and start delegating and growing and living your life at the beach, if you wish, right? Valerie, thank you so much for your time here with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much.